Okay. So, hello. And Shubhrajit brought pizza. I will be bringing the example of a cake sometime later in the presentation. So I'm guessing that's the theme that we are going for. And so I will preface this presentation first with some disclaimers and context. I've been a writer for a really long time. Of that writing pie, instructional design has been my bread and butter for the major part. But I also do content writing and blogs, collateral, that kind of thing. And technical writing, I have done like the purest kind of technical writing. I did like long back, and then I don't think I did a very good job of it because apparently thingy you don't use in tech documentation. So yeah, so that was my stint. What my goal is with this presentation is to just to give some kind of an overview of what instructional design is. And as dry as that may sound, I just feel that a lot of us think instructional design to be online e-learning modules for corporate adult learners. Um, that is not strictly the case. So yeah, I think we'll hop right in and see where the synergies are, etc. Um, Next slide, please. Okay, so now let's say we'll take the lens of a cake. So there's a cake, and there are three people who are kind of interested in various parts of the cake. We have Neha, who wants to learn how to bake a cake for her sister. Zoya got a new microwave and she wants to get started with it. She wants to know how to use the oven. And Kathy is an at-home baker, and her bake sales are going okay, but she wants to increase her sale. Now, a question to you. Based on your experience with the information that you create, the content pieces that you produce, who is most likely to consume your content? Who's your target audience? Hello?
This is a very interactive session, guys. So please feel free to answer or just type it in the chat.
My opinion, Kathy will be there. Sorry.
In my opinion, it's Neha because she wants to learn.
Okay, interesting. Someone said Neha, right?
For me, Kathy.
Okay, that's interesting. Who else? And any other guesses?
Neha.
Neha only from my end also.
Okay.
She will utilize like how to learn microwave oven, how to bake the cake, and how after baking she can sell more of the cake.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Now,
Since I'm a tech writer, I would be more focused on writing instructions for microwave oven rather than a recipe. So for me, it's Zoya.
okay. Okay. So that's interesting because when in my head, if we could move to the next slide, please. Yes. So in my head, um, uh, and this probably could be a testament to what I see tech writing as, which may be quite different from what it actually has evolved to. But the way I saw it is that Neha, who wants to learn how to bake a cake, could use an instructional designer. Zoya, who needs to use an equipment, would need the expertise of a technical writer. And Kathy wants to expand her business, so she would probably need the experience of a content marketing professional. Now, having said that, these demarcations, as we just saw, and with Shubhrajit's presentation also, that there's a kind of a confluence of the way content flows from one role to the other, from the requirement of one audience to the other. So, at any point in time, each of these roles will need, like for example, an ID will need to know how an oven works to prepare a proper instructional manual for or a course for Neha, then somewhere even Kathy will need to know that what is it about why is my business not moving? Is it because more people have learned how to bake cakes and they are doing it at home, so they don't need to buy it from me anymore? And also maybe like Zoya would probably need to know that okay, now people are using this microwave for industrial purposes. Now they are not baking a cake one off, they are baking 5-6 cakes at a time. So is there any additional material that I need to cover in my manual that will support that requirement? So that was my thinking, and which leads me to seg into the next bit, which is what is ID. Then if if all of these three are kind of similar and we are in a tomato kind of situation, then what exactly is instructional design? So there's this quote by Birdman in the movie Birdman that I really like, and where he basically says, this character says that a thing is a thing, it is not what is said of the thing. So whether you are so if you're doing instructional design, you're doing it. It doesn't matter if somebody is calling it something else or you don't know what the term is. It's a fairly human science and we all do it. If you're giving instructions to an Uber driver to locate your place, then you are also doing some part of instructional design. If you're teaching a child how to spell apple, you're still doing instructional design. So now, and instructional design is very multidimensional. There is a lot of pedagogy, lot of psychology, lot of now UI UX features, lot of tech writing principles that do come in. But overall, here's an attempt. So the way I see it is that it's a systematic framework for presenting information and creating a learning experience, or any kind of experience where learning happens. Not fun, not engagement, not persuasion, but learning. And this is key. Because, with the same content, I could create a movie, I can create an ad, I can create a step list, whatever. But is learning happening? So now, which brings us to the next question, what is learning then? And how do you determine that it has happened? This is why in the scope of instructional design, the role of assessment is very important. If you have not assessed, then you have not taught. And the point of like learning, the way we see it in the instructional design field is that, at the time of application, did your user, did the learner, did he or she retrieve the information to successfully perform the task? Because that is the metric. And yeah, so the key differentiator between all different kinds of buckets of content and the way we cater to different audiences is this metric, learning. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so now here's where I think where technical writing and ID could like basically be different, or where they are similar. Actually, not just tech writing and ID, any kind of writing and instructional design. Because we are all taking content and we are shaping them in a form that can be communicated and understood and used by a certain user, right? An end user. So yeah. So next slide, please. Okay. Now, here's what I think is common between tech writing and instructional design. The way you get the content, which is sourcing. I mean, obviously, we are not writing fantasy fiction. So, because that is also writing, right? Like fiction about a cake, but now it has to be rooted somewhere. So we need to source the information, we need to chunk the information, how much is too much, how much is too less, where to begin, where to end, and then how do we present the information? Should it be a step list? Should it be a diagram? Should it be in the form of a conversation? Should it be a video? Should it be an infographic? Stuff like that. The second thing that is common is where you orient the content to a common goal. That every piece of information that you pick that must have a purpose. There can't be, or maybe there can be superfluous information also, but you'll need to give it some kind of a scaffolding structure or something like that, which in ID speak is, we call it mandatory content and additional content, things like that. So what is it that I absolutely need to know, and what is it that, okay, if I have the time, I'll read up, but it's not affecting my ability to perform something or to learn something. And the third is the holy grail of all of our projects, which is the role of the subject matter expert and stakeholder interaction, right? Because the material that we produce is created with some context in mind, and the SME and stakeholder interaction in turn, very importantly, gives you the world of constraints and enabling factors. What is going to get in the way of you creating something? Let's say, I mean, like for example, if I wanted to use, I don't know, like say speech recognition in the microwave, will my client be okay with having that kind of a, that kind of a budget, or will they be open to rejigging their design to accommodate this? Or, can Zoya even listen? What if she can't listen to something like that? What if she can't read? So how then do I teach her, or how then do I teach Neha? And things like that, so maybe it's a budget and time and quality, right? These are the three main constraints that we all work with. Also, with a lot of blind spots that we may know or we may not know about the end user or the end student. So in this context, like let's say, Neha wants to bake a cake and I give her a recipe. But then later I find out that she is vegan or she is allergic to eggs. Then that recipe has no meaning. Or, I may want to like figure out, and this probably is what is different in terms of how an ID would approach a solution. That you may have a goal, which is to teach someone how to bake a cake. And but the context, you need to zoom out a little bit. It can't be just about Neha and cake. Why does she need to bake it? Why isn't she just ordering it from Kathy? Is it because Kathy's cakes are too expensive? Oh, so that means Neha can't spend too much on baking a cake, right? So now I can't give her a recipe with almond flour and cashew butter. That's not going to work. So principally, I think, I mean, the way I see it is that the lens of what you have to factor in is a little wider. The second thing that is different, and actually, I would like to hear from you if that is different, or is it that times have changed and tech writing is also going into these fields. Like for example, the subject matter of what an ID deals with can be, of course, very concrete, like use this, use that, use an actual equipment. And it can be very abstract and conceptual, like culture and diversity, or leadership, or communication skills. And the way I see it is that with tech writing, what I have understood is that it is mainly procedural. And even if one is taking into context other things like maturity of the user, proficiency of the user to handle a certain equipment, etc., it is still oriented to performance, right? Which is also very true of corporate learning, that it is all very performance driven. But like I said, ID is not just about performance or corporate learning. It is much wider. It is like, it can be conscious, it can be unconscious also. Like for example, I did not start this presentation on on teaching you how to communicate, but maybe there is something in the way I'm speaking that you're picking up as we should avoid that probably when we communicate. So there is a kind of learning that is anyway happening unconsciously, and there is a very conscious or systematic thing that I'm trying to convey to you, which is how does ID differ from tech writing, etc. Am I comprehensible until this point?
Absolutely, Mukta.
Okay.
It's wonderful.
So the next part is about the input and output, like where an instructional designer, like, and this goes back to the sourcing of the content. When we do instructional design for a technical thing, right, like say a network management software, in that sense, tech writing or tech documentation or what tech writers do, that is generally our input, and then our output is to create or to to place that in a larger environment. So so that's I think the what do you say, the where the synergy is, that we take what you guys do as input, and then we the output, and it need not be a very different output. It's sometimes is that you probably chunk it differently, or you or you give a different kind of treatment to it. That I don't know, if like say Neha wants to learn to bake a cake, and she's like an 11-year-old who is only interested in K-pop, right? So maybe she doesn't want to read something, you probably give her something visual, or you make it a little more engaging for her in that sense, etc. Then the other and again the goal of ID is also like, at what level do you want to teach? Do you want to teach someone like Neha should learn to bake a cake, and her next stop is MasterChef Australia? Is it that level of proficiency, or she wants to make something for her sister, or just to like figure out how she's just trying out something? So there are theories in ID that kind of like help you peg what level of behavioral proficiency are you going for, and that actually helps you create a content map. Much like what Shubhajit was talking about, the user persona, that how will the user's journey be? In this case, how will the learner's journey be? When will it begin and when will it end? How new is Neha? Can she figure out like how to use a whisk? Or does she know how to break an egg? Or is she like, okay, she's proficient, she can, she's used other stuff, but she's not, what do you say, she's not used to baking. And the other thing to remember is that our goal with Neha was to teach her how to bake a cake. It was not to teach her how to use the microwave oven. In that case, the role of the microwave oven is a subset. Because there are many ways of baking a cake. There's the micro, there's the OTG, there's the pressure cooker. So how much do we want to tell Neha? That is the context that we want to understand before we start teaching her something. And then, like I said, like, if your, the goal usually, I mean, with any kind of learning is that it must cause change in behavior, and behavior doesn't change with one learning session. So, so that's why, we give a lot of like job support material, a lot of ID training, if you see, which is around policy, right? Or orientation or ethics and things like that. I can't like take you through a 30-minute course on, non-disclosure tenets, and then expect you to be on the straight and narrow for the rest of your term in the company. You will forget. You are a creature of habit. And, and if the environment is going to make it very difficult for you to perform your task, you will not perform it, this is where the last point of what is different, and actually it's not so much what is different from tech writing. I just think that we use a different aspect of art and science, because from Shubhrajit's presentation, I do understand that there's a lot of data that you will be factoring in when you are writing your tech documentation or your user maps and things like that. But with ID, you also, I mean, it is art and it is science, it is creative, it is also scientific. We need to understand how memory works. How do people learn? Why do people learn? Why do people not learn? Why will people learn and then not not imbibe that or incorporate that into regular life? I can teach you a lot about diet, but the next time you see a chocolate cake, you will go for the chocolate cake. Is it because it's a problem of knowledge? No, it's not. You know it, right? So So things like that. And let's say now, this presentation, let's say you're allergic to cake, okay, you hate it. This presentation you've already tuned off from it, because there is an unconscious bias that has now started operating. I don't like cake. Cake is the center point of this piece of information, therefore I will not like this information. So bias plays a very important role in ID, because a lot of a big component of instructional design is also instructor led training, and instructor led training sessions, and we've all been through instructor led training sessions where we didn't have a very high regard for the instructor, like what does she know about my job, things like that, right? So sometimes biases creep in, or like say for example, personally I like storytelling. I am not such a big fan of statistics, but I will get interested in statistics if it is related to storytelling. So how do I present information in a way that gets you going, that gets you interested in what I have to say? Again, from the point of view of learning, not like a movie hook or something, right? So that is the sum and substance of what's different. Yeah, next slide, please. Okay, now this a little bit of context. How do the dots connect? This I think was a participant question, and if you are one of the participants here, maybe you can help me see if I got this right. Next slide, please. Okay, so there was a question, like Puneet had asked me to pick, one of the questions that I will be responding to. So someone had asked that how do IDs connect the dots using a storyline, whereas tech writing usually presents inputs as disparate chunks. Is there anyone in the audience that had asked that question? Do you want to reframe this for us? Hello?
I'm not sure the person is in this conference today.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah, so we'd love to hear the answer.
Okay, so I mean, my luck to pick the question that the person didn't land up for. Okay, but now this is my guess. Okay, that what the person actually probably meant to ask is that in tech documentation, probably like there are pieces of content that are presented as islands, and each unit is in and of itself complete, but together as a whole maybe there is not as much cohesiveness. I disagree with that, which is why I probably wanted the participant to set the context, but I mean, assuming because this person has used very interestingly the word storyline, right? And that's the thing. A lot of people feel that ID is like, okay, if you're using scenarios and examples and stories, then you're an ID. Otherwise, you're presenting a checklist, then you're a tech writer. That's not the case. Of like, see, ID strategies is like a tool belt. Story, scenario, examples are different tools, and they will be used for different kinds of things. Like I said, like if Neha is not a step list kind of person, like when like some people when you read a map, right, like sometimes like if you're spatially challenged, you can't figure out like the north, east, west, whatever. When people say go right, go north and all, I don't get it. I like it in a step list form, right? So story is a way where some kind of content can be presented, but it's not the only way. So I'm guessing that the question is probably how do instructional designers go about knitting the content together? Now there are several ways in which we can do that, and this actually, my response actually ties in very closely with Subhajit's last slide. One is that context is paramount. There is no right or wrong way to teach something. There is just a right or wrong way for you at that time, right? Then learning objectives are something that instructional designers actually come up with, and that is used as a compass. Like I said, what is the performance goal that we are going for? Master chef or goodwill for sister? like that kind of a spectrum. So depending on that, I will teach what I have to, how much I will convey, and what approach I will use, right? And task or application based, this is very common for corporate training. That, you know, when you're teaching adults, adults will want to transfer that knowledge into a practical environment very, very quickly, right? If you are teaching something. Now, of course, there are a lot of approaches, like there is gamification where you don't teach anything. You are just giving people a game and they are exploring the environment and they are picking up clues and they are learning like that. Then, of course, assessment, very, very critical, because like I said, like, you know, and assessment also, you know, there's a trivia that might help you get a sense of how important assessment is. Like in the West, and maybe now in India as well, there are only assessment specialists. They only write assessments and they are paid very, very well. They are paid, in fact, more than instructional designers. Because, you know, the way you design an assessment is probably the litmus test of actually not the ultimate litmus test, because ultimate litmus test is behavioral change, but at least like the first entry gate litmus test of whether your training has happened properly or not. Like if I've taught you how to drive the car, but I'm testing you how to open the door, that is not proper or adequate assessment, right? So assessment is very important. Then, okay, I think I've touched on this before, like the use of story as a strategy, but I'll probably dwell on this a little more because with the tech writers that I know, a lot of them are very curious about how do you use a story. Now, see, story has a definition and it has a structure and a format. And story is not the same as a scenario or an example. Okay, like so you know, I want dessert. Example, cake. Okay, I want dessert for my vegan gluten-free sister. So I want this kind of a cake. That probably is a little bit of a scenario. You add little more details and things like that. A story needs to have a beginning, middle, and end, and it needs to have like a conflict, a resolution, and several times not all kinds of content will lend themselves to be taught via a story. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. So, you know, you take a pick. Yeah. So that was this slide. Okay, now something to do. This is where I thought that we could like riff a little bit. Can we go to the next slide, please? So what I would invite all of you to do here is, you know, I just invite you into my world, basically. So just think back to the last piece of content you created, any piece of documentation you worked on, etc. And, you know, imagine a person using it. Like give that person a name, a hair color, you know, what that person wears, etc. Like, let's humanize that. So imagine that person using your piece of content, and in what kind of a day environment or in what kind of an environment will that be used? Like, you know, under what circumstances is that person likely to reach out for what you've created? What might get in the way of that person using it well? What will probably not get in the way? You know, what will enhance that person's experience? And, you know, we could take a little time, maybe 5 minutes to just like think of something like that. And, you know, whoever is willing could share it with us. And the silence kind of indicates the overwhelming enthusiasm for this exercise. But are we willing to try this? Or, I mean, we could skip it if nobody is interested.
I think people should be interested. Maybe somebody.
I'll start. Can I say something?
Yes, sure.
Okay, so I've been working on some documentation for my company, and I really think that this person, when he opens up to my tool and integrates with his cloud resources, then I think he would be like, oh God, another tool to work on. You know, you have to learn another tool or application. So okay. I'm sure that my document would give him all the information to start, and he would be like, oh, it's easy. The documentation is really nice. Because that's what I did for, if I start something and I go to documentation, oh God, another thing. Oh, but then it's easy, right?
Oh,
So,
okay.
is that kind of an answer you're looking for?
Yeah, cool. So, so that's interesting that you kind of like foresaw, sorry, the problem, and then you understand the role that your documentation plays in making it a little easy for the learner. I mean, sorry, for the user. Cool.
Yes. So,
Anyone has examples where you feel that your documentation was too much, like you didn't need to have that much of detail in it.
Hi, this is Vamsi. I just want to share that it is a opposite case. I created a document that explains some software application and something, and I felt that it needed much more than what I have provided. And I when I ran that to my manager, he was like, "No, this is enough." But if I had more screenshots, more steps, step by step procedures to explain some of the complex things, I would think that that would make a larger impact on the person using the document.
Oh, that's interesting. Why did you feel that way? Was it because you interacted with the software and you thought that your documentation didn't quite cover all of it? Is that
Yeah,
where you? Okay.
exactly. I felt that some of things might be a little difficult to understand for a actually I was right I should mention the context. I was writing the document for a new software newcomer to the field of software developmentation. So I felt
Okay.
that it might confuse them, or they might not know what how to set up something, how to they are just like do this Oracle based setup, like they might not know that, right?
Okay.
uh,
Okay.
so I felt like it should need more screenshots and all, so that's what I felt.
Okay. Super. That's a great example. Thank you. I think my time is up, right? I mean, we can open it to questions, I think, at this point, if anyone has any questions.
yes, we can open up for questions. We are ready for questions, guys and girls. So,
Yeah. Hi,
any
this is
questions?
Ashish here. Yeah. Hey, hi, this is Ashish here.
Hi, Ashish.
Yeah. I just wanted to know what is this concept of what we have this. I would like to write it. Bloom's taxonomy, and how does it really impact how the IDs create the instructional designs or all those stuff, the content.
Yes, that's a very good question. So the learning objectives that we use as a compass for figuring out, what level of performance what level of performance proficiency we are looking at, that is the Bloom's taxonomy. So the taxonomy is basically a categorization of how to present content for what kind of behavior. So if I just want you to identify the ingredients of a cake, then I will teach you accordingly. If I have to teach you how to bake a cake, I will have to teach that accordingly. So you will need a lot more information for that Bloom's level, which is higher, which is actual baking, actual application, to something that is lower, which is at a cognitive level, which is just listing out, remembering, rote learning, that kind of thing.
Okay, that makes sense, and thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Your session reminds me of some of my days, Mukta. I had been a teacher for quite some time, and I've taught children from class 2 to engineering second year.
Wow.
Hello.
So it's hello. Okay. So I have used some of these in the instructional designing principles, and I did my Bachelor of Education also, and Bloom's taxonomy, Gagné's events, and
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay.
now for adult learning, ADDIE model. It's
Mm.
so good to be there, right? Again with instructional designing.
And it's a very, like I said, it's a very human science. Instinctively we all do it. If somebody asks you for directions, you will first find out where are you now, how are you traveling, right? It's
Absolutely.
like that. Yeah. So
Pallavi, we have one question in the chat box. Chidambaram has asking us.
It's not a question.
It is a
Oh,
question.
sorry. I thought he's sharing some information. So, Mukta, we have a question. As Neha, Zoya, and Kathy, there are n number of permutations and combinations in real world scenario. Okay. So, as an ID, is it possible to address each and every need in given budget, time, and quantity?
no, it is not all. I mean, you cannot address each and every need, but you can try to. What we do is that you try to take the most common example, okay, and the one that is going to have the most impact, and you target that, and then the other information you can probably present it as support material, or you break down the learning in such a way that you can cover as many permutations and combinations as possible. So for example, like, if I have to take the example of baking again, then and now obviously it depends on what kind of a training I want to set up. If it is only for experienced bakers, it's going to be one thing. If it's for newbie bakers, it's going to be the other thing. If it's like a primer for everybody, it's going to be something else. So this is where the SME and the stakeholder interaction becomes important. Like, where is it that they want their training to be targeted the most, and yeah, and that's how you go about it. But a short answer is that not I mean, no, each and every person, though, never, that's never going to happen. In fact, the same person also at different contexts also might not happen. So you take the most common and the most targeted, and you go with that.
Yeah. Hi, Mukta.
Hi.
Hi, this is Vijay here. I have a couple of questions. One, as you said, you've been a freelancer for the last 5 years. So I do know the challenges that freelancers in general face in their work area. But did you face any challenges as a freelancer and specific to instructional design, doing the instructional design work as a freelancer? And second question is, uh, like, is there a need for an instructional designer to be in to have that physical proximity? Like, can you do this instructional design work online? I mean, of course, now it's a pandemic situation, but even otherwise, can one effectively do instructional design remotely? Yeah.
Both very good questions, and both requiring different sessions only altogether. But okay, I'll address this. See, the first part is about what challenges are faced as an instructional designer. Sorry, as a freelancer, right? See, several, but and I've been a freelancer in several stints. So this is my third stint as a freelancer. So first I was freelancing, then I gave up, then I went back to a job and all that, and now I've been freelancing for like 5 years now. So see, the biggest challenge has been for me my own mindset. And as cliched as that sounds, it really was tough. It really is tough, actually. That like, there is how should I put it? It's like uh, it's like wearing white on white. There is nothing to hide, there is nowhere to go. If whatever flaws I have in a corporate setup, maybe that could be absorbed by someone else, but if my estimation is not correct, if I don't know something, then it's all on me. And the mindset of, like, whether I'm worthy enough, like, what do I bring to the table, like those kind of doubts. So a lot of my issues have been very uh, basically related to self-limiting beliefs, I think, and my own mindset, that where you think of yourself as one kind of a person, that I'm not good with money, or I'm not creative, or I'm not this, I'm not that, and and that is something that you really have to face up to. That, and then, like, say, with mindset come issues related to, like, say, mental and emotional health, which can be very, very pronounced. I'm not saying that as a freelancer, but I feel that in a job I still have those same issues, but I was distracted by work, deadline, etc. In my setup as a freelancer, all of those issues are more pronounced. So that was one thing. And the second is about instructional design, right? Whether you need proximity or not. Again, context determines it. Like, if I'm like, for example, when I'm doing ID for instructional design for some solution which is very sensitive, like if you're doing it for a bank, okay, they are not going to give you access to their software online, so you have to go to their office and get that done. But if I'm doing like something like setting up an ILT deck for a leadership seminar or communication skills, or even something like this, for example, that I can do offline. And then, yeah, some people are averse to trust. Or no, sorry, not averse to trust. Nobody's averse to trust, but some people trust more if they see you, and they communicate better when they see you, and some others not. So it depends. If people are very, very insistent on meeting and all that, then I don't take up those projects, because I don't like human interaction too much. So, I don't want to meet anybody unless I have to.
Sure. Thanks.
You
Um,
are
uh,
too
Hi,
frank.
Mukta. Harish here.
Hi.
I'm so sorry to interrupt. Great session, but since the question was more specific to freelance instructional design, I think we should also mention the podcast.
Oh, yes,
So,
yes. Harish,
yeah.
you take the
Yeah. So Mukta, myself, I'm Harish. I'm also a freelance instructional designer. Mukta, myself, and another friend, we did a podcast specific to what it is to be a freelance instructional designer in India. We tried to answer as many questions as we could based on our experiences. I think I'll share the link with Puneet. So if he can forward it to you later, if you guys have any further questions, you can reach out to Mukta on that. And about the second question also, I just want to add one thing. Sometimes it's a personal choice, it saves, about the proximity, especially with the SMEs. Sometimes, I like to spend at least a day with my SME in the initial stages of the project, so that I can act as a journalist there, get as much information as I can from him before I begin working on my storyboard or other things or design strategy and other things. So sometimes it's also a personal choice. It saves a lot of time in future if you're willing to spend a day or two with your client, especially the SMEs. Yeah, so that's all from me.
Hi, I'm
that's a
Sabira. I have a question. I was just wondering how easy or difficult it is to maintain the courses with regards to the updates happening to a product on regular basis. Is it like, for example, I'm a technical writer and we maintain documents in Data and FrameMaker. So it is easy to go back, just update the content, right? But how is it easy or difficult is it to do the same when you have a course, say, instant ID course or some that kind of path?
See, again, it'll differ, like how complex your course is, what kind of interconnectivities are there. Like, for example, sometimes, change in one course, if let's say you've done an entire curriculum which involves, like, say, 50 lessons, change in one will probably impact all the others, then that's tough. And if there are multiple SMEs, right, then one SME will give feedback on Monday, another will give, on Wednesday. Then keeping track of all that can also be challenging and stuff like that. And also, and since Harish is there, I would invite him to even take this question, because, see, instructional design and the work that we do is a pretty big spectrum. So, like, for example, I do a lot of like storyboarding and consulting and things like that. And Harish does all this, and in addition to that, he also develops the courses. Like, he creates those e-learning courses and stuff like that. So at an execution level, I'm sure there will be like implications there. So Harish, you want to take this?
Yeah, of course there'll be, but I think it depends on the tool that you're using and what kind of changes you need. See, most of the times what happens is these companies that I develop courses for, they come back to me after a year or so. They say they changed some terms. Companies come up with these fancy terms that they use in these trainings and for their products as well. So if it's just a change of a term or something, a few words in the course, it's not that difficult. but it also depends on what other tools are associated with your course. For example, we have an animation tool called Beyond. It was previously called Go Animate, where we develop our scenarios and all. What happens is the tool is a monthly license. So if I purchased a license for 1 month for my project and develop that, and if they come back to me for a change, I have to go back purchase a 1 month license once again, for which I'll have to charge the client. So it's more of money related things than actual work that is required. So basic changes, it doesn't take much time. Just like in your technical documentation, even in my development tool called Storyline, I can do a find and replace also if it's just a word. If it's a picture also, because think of it as just another Microsoft Office tool. So it's very easy to replace a few things. But if there are other tools linked to it, and if there's a lot of branching required, these things have to be played around with a little bit. But it's not that difficult at all.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Hi guys, this is Vishakha. Just to add to what Harish and Mukta mentioned, I would like to also let you know that as a part of analysis, typically that's a very important question that we usually ask is, what is the shelf life of this particular training? And if you realize that it's going to undergo changes or updates pretty often, then we try to keep it very simple. Something as simple as find and replace that we do in PowerPoint or Word. So that's the big consideration in the analysis phase, and that's where we try to understand the exact shelf life, and that helps, I guess. Thanks.
True. Also, one more thing is, for our courses, what we usually do is some of our clients ask for source files while we are talking about the initial budgets and all. So what happens is many of our clients are knowledgeable on the tools themselves. If they have to make any small changes, if they have the source files with them, they can actually do it themselves too.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And we'll take all the next questions